Step into a world where moonlight shapes destiny and shadows whisper ancient secrets. Welcome to the Nocturnal Witch, keeper of the vampire throne, a tale forged in darkness and bound by forbidden power. Tonight, we unravel the legacy of a witch whose magic is feared, revered, and eternally tied to the blood-ruled kingdom she protects. From haunting rituals to the silent wars waged beneath the veil of night, her story reveals a fate intertwined with immortal rulers and ancient curses. Prepare yourself. This is where witchcraft meets royalty, and the night crowns its chosen guardian. Origins in the deep of night vampire. In the oldest shadows of the world, where the moon's light barely grazed the jagged peaks of forgotten mountains, the first stirrings of the deep of night vampire began. These were not the creatures of mere folklore, nor the whims of superstition whispered in village squares. They were ancient entities, born of darkness, necessity, and a profound hunger that transcended mortality. Unlike later vampires, who craved blood as a sustenance of life, the deep of night vampires were entities tied to the very essence of night, to the cosmic balance between light and shadow. Their existence was predicated on a singular truth: where darkness thrives, power persists. The origin of these vampires traces back to an era long before the rise of human civilizations, when the earth was young and its forests impenetrable, its skies heavy with celestial phenomena. The first of these creatures, known only in fragmented myths as Nixthar, emerged from the void between worlds. Nixthar was not born in the conventional sense. Instead, it was a convergence of the night itself, a crystallization of the void that hung between stars and within the hidden places of the earth. This entity was neither male nor female, neither mortal nor divine. It was an elemental manifestation of night's deepest essence. Quiet, patient, and inexorably hungry. The transformation that created the first deep of night vampire was both catastrophic and beautiful. It is said that Nixthar's emergence coincided with the blood eclipse, a rare celestial alignment when the moon's reflection turned red in the shadow of the sun. During this eclipse, the veil between worlds thinned, and Nixthar's form solidified in the liminal space between reality and shadow. To the primitive beings of that time, Nixthar appeared as a shadow within shadows, moving without sound, consuming the life force of creatures it encountered. Yet, unlike later vampires, who drew merely from the blood of mortals, Nixthar drew from the very vitality of night itself, the silent, omnipresent darkness that blankets all living things in secrecy. The Nixthar's existence was solitary at first. Unlike later vampire lineages that formed covens, clans, or courts, the deep of night vampires did not recognize kinship or hierarchy in the conventional sense. Their interactions with one another were rare, fleeting, and often violent. They existed to perfect the art of nocturnal predation, to master shadow manipulation, and to understand the rhythm of the dark that sustained them. With each passing century, Nixthar learned to bend shadows to its will, to cloak itself in darkness so complete that even the keenest eyes could not detect it. It could pass through walls, slip between the leaves of trees, and vanish in the moonlight's reflection. The evolution of these early vampires was inseparable from the world around them. Forests grew thicker, rivers ran darker, and the nights lengthened in response to their presence. Animals instinctively avoided regions Nixthar inhabited. As the predator's hunger was unlike any natural hunter's, it reached beyond flesh into essence, leaving trails of silence and decay. The first human tribes encountered this being not as a predator they could hunt, but as an anomaly, a presence that unnerved, a darkness that whispered through the trees and hid in the corners of their vision. Those who survived encounters with Nixthar were rarely unchanged. Some went mad, others became sensitive to shadows, able to perceive movements and presences invisible to ordinary eyes. It was from these early human encounters that the first myths about vampires emerged. Yet, these myths were crude, simplistic, and often fearful exaggerations of a far more complex reality. The deep of night vampire did not feed from the blood of mortals as a necessity. It drew power from the interplay of life and shadow. Mortals were vessels, yes, but not merely for sustenance. Humans were conduits, the living contrast to the eternal night, and by drawing from them, vampires could anchor themselves more solidly in the material world. Over centuries, Nixthar began to experiment with mortality, creating the first of the living shadows. These beings were neither fully human nor fully vampire, existing in a liminal state that allowed them to traverse the night without fear, feeding not only on blood, but also on energy, dreams, and emotions. Unlike ordinary humans, these proto-vampires could perceive the strands of shadow that bound the world together. They became the emissaries of Nixthar, agents that could manipulate mortal society subtly, guiding tribes, influencing leaders, and sowing chaos when necessary. This marked the first step toward civilization's co-option by the deep of night vampires, though such influence remained clandestine for millennia. The structure of early vampire society, or lack thereof, was deliberate. The deep of night vampire did not crave hierarchy. It craved mastery over darkness. Those who demonstrated ingenuity, patience, and a profound understanding of shadow could rise in prominence, but only in accordance with the subtle, often invisible networks of influence Nixthar allowed. Covenry, as humans later understood it, was a distant echo of these origins. Deep of night vampires would eventually form small networks, not for companionship, but for efficiency. They were predators bound by purpose rather than loyalty, always seeking to refine their connection to the night. The powers of the deep of night vampires extended far beyond mere nocturnal predation. They could manipulate perception, bending light and shadow to create illusions so convincing that even the most skeptical human would doubt their senses. They could step between shadows, move through darkness as if it were water, and even in rare instances, travel short distances into the void itself, appearing in places where the physical body could not reach. This ability to exist partially outside the material plane is what allowed the deep of night vampires to endure through epochs without aging in the conventional sense. Yet, power came with cost. The more a vampire drew from life, the more it risked losing connection to humanity. Early deep of night vampires faced existential isolation, their perception of time warped, their emotions dulled, and their morality fragmented. Nixthar, the first, had to navigate these consequences, balancing the hunger for mastery with the need to retain some tether to the world of mortals. This balance was critical. Without it, a vampire could descend into the wraith of the void, a creature of shadow so consumed by night that even its own kin could not recognize it. Such beings were rare but terrifying, wandering endlessly, consuming indiscriminately, leaving behind vacuums of life and light. As centuries passed, deep of night vampires began to interact with emerging civilizations. Their influence was subtle but profound. Ancient temples and sacred groves often occupied sites they had marked, places where the veil between life and shadow was thinnest. Pharaohs, kings, and tribal leaders unknowingly became pawns in networks orchestrated by these nocturnal predators. Some vampires chose to remain hidden entirely, thriving in wild regions where humans dared not tread. Others, drawn to intrigue, infiltrated human society, becoming advisors, mystics, or clandestine rulers. Their actions were invisible, yet their impact on history was tangible, a shadow shaping the world from behind the veil. The creation of vampire progeny marked another evolutionary step. Unlike later vampires, who spread through direct biting, deep of night vampires used a more deliberate and esoteric process. A human had to be chosen carefully, one whose essence resonated with the rhythms of darkness. The transformation involved not just the draining of blood, but the infusion of shadow, a ritual that tethered the new vampire to the cosmic night. Only those who could endure the mental and spiritual upheaval survived, emerging as beings capable of perceiving the deep, underlying patterns of existence. Many failed and perished, leaving behind nothing but husks drained of vitality, a grim reminder of the cost of crossing into darkness. With each successive generation, the abilities of the deep of night vampires diversified. Some became seers, capable of perceiving events before they unfolded. Others became shadowmancers, bending darkness into tangible forms. A few achieved a form of immortality, so profound that their very presence could alter the passage of time in localized regions. Yet, the fundamental principle remained unchanged. They were creatures of night, and the night demanded respect. Mortality was fleeting, but the darkness was eternal. Philosophically, the deep of night vampires were enigmatic. They did not view themselves as evil in human terms. To them, morality was an arbitrary human construct. Their actions, while often horrifying to mortals, were extensions of the natural order of the night. Life and death, light and shadow, predator and prey, all were threads woven into the cosmic tapestry. The deep of night vampires merely existed within their natural paradigm, fulfilling a role as both observer and participant, predator and philosopher. In later centuries, as human understanding of the supernatural evolved, the deep of night vampires became the subjects of legend, feared and revered in equal measure. Tales of shadowy figures, disappearances during moonless nights, and inexplicable events proliferated. Yet, these stories often misunderstood the true nature of these beings. Vampires were not mindless killers, nor mere spirits of vengeance. They were custodians of darkness, ancient entities maintaining the equilibrium between light and shadow, ensuring that the night remained deep and inviolate. The modern perception of vampires owes much to these early origins, yet it is distorted. Popular culture often emphasizes bloodlust, immortality, and romanticism, missing the fundamental essence of the deep of night vampire. They are creatures of cosmic balance. Their hunger is not merely physical. It is existential, philosophical, and deeply intertwined with the fabric of night. Understanding them requires not just observation, but immersion in the shadows, an acceptance of the vast, silent world beyond human comprehension. Ultimately, the deep of night vampire represents a paradox, at once predator and philosopher, timeless and transient, terrifying and mesmerizing. Nixthar, the primordial being, still exists, though hidden, waiting, and observing. Through its progeny, the legacy of the deep of night endures, a reminder that even in the modern world, the night holds secrets that cannot be tamed, understood fully, or illuminated without consequence. These vampires are not mere monsters. They are ancient truths, shadows of the cosmos, and keepers of the eternal night. Through their evolution, interactions with humanity, and philosophical contemplation, the deep of night vampires have become symbols of patience, strategy, and the subtle art of survival. They teach that power is not always in dominance, but in understanding, in movement without trace, and in the patient orchestration of events unseen. The night, after all, is vast, and those who dwell within its depths see the world not as humans perceive it, but as it truly is, a delicate interplay of light and shadow, life and death, fleeting existence and eternal vigilance. In conclusion, the origins of the deep of night vampire are more than myth. They are the story of an entity that arose from the void, mastered the rhythms of night, and created a lineage that shaped both the natural and human world in subtle yet profound ways. Nixthar's legacy endures, not as a tale of horror alone, but as a testament to the enduring power of darkness, patience, and the mysteries that lie hidden when the world sleeps. The deep of night vampire is not merely a creature to be feared, but a force to be acknowledged, a symbol of the night's eternal dominion over all life and light. In the shadowed corners of vampire history, where myths and truths intertwine, few covenants are as enigmatic and feared as the pact of night and blood. This ancient agreement, whispered across centuries, is not merely a bond between mortal and immortal, nor a mere treaty of survival. It is an intricate weave of power, blood, and cosmic obligation that defines the very essence of those who dare to embrace it. To understand this pact is to unravel the deeper mysteries of vampiric existence, the interplay between darkness and desire, and the heavy price of true power. The origins of the pact of night and blood are shrouded in obscurity. Some scholars argue it predates the oldest vampire lineages, born in the shadow of the first eclipses, when night ruled the world and mortal fear fed the supernatural. Others trace its inception to the era of blood witches, mystics who wielded both the occult and the life essence of living creatures. These early practitioners recognized that the night was more than the absence of sun. It was a living force, a sentient veil that amplified power when paired with the essence of blood. The pact itself, therefore, is not a simple contract, but a ritualistic communion with the nocturnal essence, sealed through blood and oath. At its core, the pact of night and blood is a symbiosis. Unlike the traditional vampiric feeding bond, which merely sustains life, this covenant intertwines the vampire's soul with the fabric of night itself. Initiates of the pact do not merely drink, they surrender, offering portions of their mortal or immortal essence to the night in exchange for profound gifts. Heightened senses beyond mortal comprehension, accelerated regeneration, and, in rare cases, the ability to manipulate shadows as if they were living extensions of their will. However, the pact is not without peril. To embrace it is to accept a perpetual tether to the night, a dependence on darkness that grows with every passing cycle. Sunlight becomes not merely harmful but intolerable, and prolonged absence from night can trigger a psychic unraveling that few survive. The ritual to enter the pact is as complex as it is perilous. Traditionally, it must occur during the deepest phase of a lunar cycle, when the moon's influence over night and blood reaches its zenith. The initiate must fast for 3 nights, subsisting only on blood drawn from willing donors, an act that symbolizes the shedding of personal weakness in favor of communal and cosmic strength. On the 3rd night, the vampire kneels within a consecrated circle, etched in both runes and the blood of ancestors. Here, the essence of night is invoked through incantations, each syllable resonating with the frequencies of the unseen. The culmination of the ritual requires a double offering. The vampire must pierce their own heart or a significant vein, letting their life essence flow into the circle, while simultaneously offering the life essence of another, symbolizing both sacrifice and mastery over the primal laws of life and death. Only when the blood mingles under the shroud of darkness does the pact take hold, binding the vampire to the night in ways that transcend mere mortality. The benefits of the pact are profound, yet they are always accompanied by a shadowed cost. Vampires who have entered the covenant often display abilities that verge on the mystical. Vision becomes absolute in darkness. Every scent, sound, and heartbeat is amplified. Time itself seems malleable in the nocturnal hours, and some adepts report the ability to perceive events across vast distances, as though night itself carries their consciousness. In extreme cases, certain pact-bound vampires, known as Noctari, can bend shadows to shield themselves, cloak their movements, or even form ephemeral constructs of darkness. However, these powers are fueled directly by the vampire's blood and emotional intensity. Fear, rage, or excessive indulgence can destabilize their abilities, turning shadows against them or causing hallucinations indistinguishable from reality. Beyond individual enhancement, the pact of night and blood establishes a hierarchy within vampire society. Those who have fully embraced the covenant are often regarded with a mix of reverence and dread. They are not merely warriors or hunters, but living conduits of the night's will, capable of influencing events on scales that rival entire mortal kingdoms. Coven elders often seek such vampires as emissaries or enforcers, knowing that their presence alone can shift the balance of power. However, the pact also demands allegiance. A vampire bound by it is, in essence, answerable to the night, and by extension, to those who interpret its whispers. To defy the pact is to court madness or death, for the night exacts its vengeance with a precision that mortal law cannot anticipate. Psychologically, the pact reshapes the vampire's identity. Mortality, though long abandoned, is still echoed in their cravings and fears. Through the pact, they confront the primal truths of existence: hunger, fear, and the inevitability of darkness. Unlike unbound vampires, who may cling to vanity, political ambition, or personal vendettas, those who are bound to the pact often cultivate patience, discipline, and an almost meditative awareness of their surroundings. The night becomes both companion and teacher, demanding respect while offering insight. This symbiosis fosters a type of intelligence that is both predatory and philosophical, a cognition that can plan centuries in advance while remaining intimately aware of each fleeting moment. The dangers inherent in the pact cannot be understated. The bond is reciprocal. As night empowers the vampire, so too does it demand obedience and sustenance. Blood becomes not just a source of life, but a currency of power. Deprivation, whether through starvation or forced isolation from nightfall, weakens the covenant, leading to physical deterioration and eventual psychic collapse. Historical accounts recount the fates of those who attempted to wield the pact without proper reverence. Eyes clouded with visions of eternal darkness, minds fractured by whispers of unseen entities, and bodies that withered even in the absence of mortal threat. Such stories serve as grim reminders that the pact is not a tool, but a covenant with conditions as absolute as death itself. Interestingly, the pact also has a social dimension among vampires. Blood-sharing and nocturnal gatherings are not merely rituals of power, but affirmations of the covenant. Within these assemblies, the most adept pact-bound vampires, often called shadow-bearers, act as intermediaries between the night and the collective. They interpret omens, guide initiates, and ensure that the delicate balance between blood, darkness, and morality is maintained. Here, loyalty is not demanded but earned, and betrayal is a sin punished not by law, but by the subtle machinations of night itself. It is said that a shadow-bearer can sense duplicity through the slightest disturbance in blood flow or shadow, a testament to the heightened perception the pact affords. Historically, the pact of night and blood has influenced conflicts and alliances across centuries. From the rise of ancient vampire dynasties to secretive battles against human witch covens, those bound by the pact have often tipped scales. Unlike conventional vampire power struggles, which rely on brute force or deception, pact-bound vampires operate on both mystical and psychological planes. They orchestrate outcomes, anticipate threats, and exploit weaknesses invisible to ordinary senses. Legends tell of battles where entire armies were rendered useless, not by martial skill, but by the subtle manipulations of shadow, misdirection, and fear, an artistry only possible through intimate communion with night and blood. Yet, despite the allure of its power, the pact is inherently isolating. Full mastery demands periods of solitude and reflection. The vampire must meditate in darkness, attuning themselves to the rhythm of night, listening to the whispers of blood and shadow alike. Emotional restraint is paramount. Indulgence in excessive emotion can weaken the connection, inviting chaos or even destruction. Relationships with mortals become fraught, as ordinary life cannot comprehend the intensity of existence within the pact. Friendships and alliances with other vampires, too, require careful balance, for envy or misunderstanding can escalate into conflicts that reverberate far beyond ordinary comprehension. The symbolism of the pact is as layered as its practice. Blood represents life, power, and sacrifice. Night represents mystery, the unknown, and the inescapable truth of mortality. Together, they form a duality: life and death, power and obligation, freedom and bondage. Those who embrace the pact often carve symbols of entwined blood and shadow onto ritual altars, tattoos, or even directly upon their flesh, marking themselves as vessels of nocturnal will. These symbols are both protective and declarative, a permanent testament to the vampire's devotion and a warning to others. Contemporary vampire scholars continue to debate the full implications of the pact. Some argue that it is not merely a supernatural agreement, but a metaphysical alignment, linking the vampire to the cosmic cycles of night, lunar phases, and even unseen planes of existence. Others contend that the pact serves as a moral framework, a test of restraint, discipline, and ethical use of power. In both cases, the conclusion is the same: the pact of night and blood is a crucible. It reveals character as much as it grants power, punishes arrogance as much as it rewards skill, and demands reverence for forces that are simultaneously alluring and terrifying. In essence, the pact of night and blood is the apex of vampiric ambition and peril. It is a covenant that reshapes identity, amplifies power, and binds the vampire to the eternal rhythm of darkness. To those who enter willingly, it offers abilities beyond imagination, a connection to the primal forces of existence, and the subtle mastery over life, death, and fear. To those who enter recklessly, it promises madness, decay, and annihilation. Every drop of blood offered, every shadow embraced, deepens the bond and draws the vampire further into the intricate dance of power, obligation, and consequence. Ultimately, the Pact of Night and Blood is more than lore. It is a reflection of the fundamental truth of vampiric existence. That power is inseparable from sacrifice, that night is inseparable from fear, and that true mastery is inseparable from humility. To live bound by this pact is to walk a path both exalted and perilous, a journey that spans centuries, guided by the silent whispers of darkness and the eternal pulse of blood. It is a covenant that asks the question, what are you willing to surrender to become more than mortal, to become one with the night itself? Those who answer are transformed, not merely into creatures of power, but into legends whose stories echo long after the last mortal candle has flickered out. In the Pact of Night and Blood represents the ultimate intersection of desire, power, and cosmic alignment in vampire lore. Its intricate rituals, profound rewards, and devastating costs create a tapestry of myth and reality that challenges our understanding of life, death, and morality. By embracing it, a vampire transcends ordinary existence, achieving heights of perception, strength, and influence unmatched in the mortal or immortal realms. Yet the pact is also a cautionary tale. Power without reverence is ruin, and even the strongest blood cannot sustain those who defy the rules of night. Through this delicate balance, the Pact of Night and Blood endures as both legend and law, shaping vampires not merely as predators of the night, but as philosophers, guardians, and interpreters of the dark and eternal. The fall of the Shadow Court vampire. The Shadow Court was feared across the vampire kingdoms, a cabal whose whispers could shape empires, whose plots could topple monarchs. Among its members, none inspired both awe and dread like Velith the Umbral, a vampire whose mastery over shadows was unparalleled, whose cunning rivaled the oldest of the elder bloodlines. Velith had not only survived centuries of courtly intrigue, but had risen above the ambitions of peers, earning the title of the Shadow Court's Silent Hand, the unseen force that moved pawns in the game of eternal night. Yet, even the most calculating of predators are vulnerable to a single misstep, a flaw overlooked, or a heart swayed by something too human to acknowledge. Velith's fall began not with betrayal, but with curiosity, a dangerous curiosity about the mortal realms and the magic that lingered there, unclaimed by the undead. The rise of Velith and the Shadow Court. To understand Velith's demise, one must first understand his ascent. The Shadow Court thrived on secrecy, its members bound not by blood alone, but by shared mastery of subterfuge, illusion, and necromantic influence. Velith distinguished himself early by embracing the shadows not merely as a tool for concealment, but as an extension of his will. He could weave darkness into sentient tendrils, feel the heartbeat of the night, and manipulate the perceptions of those who dared meet him. In court, this made him invaluable. He was the arbiter of secrets, the collector of whispers, the manipulator of unseen strings. Other vampires coveted power, but Velith commanded it invisibly, shaping destinies from the shadows. His presence was subtle yet suffocating, a constant reminder that the Shadow Court's dominion was total, and its silent hand always watching. Yet power always carries its own weight. Velith's confidence, his reliance on intellect over emotion, created fissures within his armor. He believed himself invincible because he had survived the schemes of rivals, the wrath of elders, and the treachery of those closest to him. But one night, during a rare journey to the mortal lands to study forgotten sorcery, he encountered a witch unlike any he had faced. The mortal witch and the seed of ruin. Her name was Lysara, a mortal of hidden lineage, untouched by the vampiric taint, but steeped in forbidden knowledge. She practiced shadowcraft that mirrored Velith's own, but with a nuance that no vampire had yet perceived. Where Velith manipulated shadows externally, Lysara could coax shadows from within, using the darkness as a mirror to the soul. Their meeting was accidental, a collision of predator and prey, or so Veleth initially assumed. He was drawn to her power, curious and cautious. Lysara, however, saw through the guise of the silent hand immediately. She did not flinch at the aura of death, nor did she attempt to flee. She challenged Veleth intellectually, forcing him to confront concepts of vulnerability and mortality he had long suppressed. What began as observation evolved into fascination. Veleth returned to the Shadow Court with fragments of mortal magic hidden in his mind, studying them in secret, experimenting with enchantments that blurred the line between human and vampire power. It was his hubris that led to the first tremor of his undoing, the betrayal within the court. The Shadow Court was patient and observant, and it noticed Veleth's subtle shift. Whispered rumors circulated, questioning why the silent hand had seemed distracted, why certain schemes were left incomplete, and why shadows that once obeyed him perfectly now flickered with hesitance. A member of the court, Kareth, a vampire whose loyalty had always been shallow, seized upon these doubts. Kareth had watched Veleth for decades, admiring and envying him in equal measure. The moment he sensed weakness, he began planting seeds of dissent among the other vampires. Using Veleth's clandestine excursions to mortal lands as evidence, he painted him as a traitor, a risk to the court's supremacy. Veleth, immersed in his experiments, underestimated the subtlety of courtly betrayal. Shadows might conceal secrets, but they cannot conceal human or vampire emotion. The court's elders convened in secret, a trial without precedent, their judgment swift and absolute. Veleth's defenses were formidable, but even his powers could not silence the unanimous fear of the elders. A vampire who dabbled in mortal magic was no longer fully aligned with the Shadow Court. The unraveling of power. Veleth's confrontation with the court was catastrophic. They did not attack him outright. Instead, they withdrew their support, subtly undermining his influence. Allies he once trusted now withheld information or sabotaged his efforts. Shadows he had long commanded began resisting his will, as if the court's collective fear had seeped into the very darkness itself. It was in these moments of isolation that Veleth's reliance on mortal magic became both his shield and his curse. He attempted to integrate Lysara's techniques into his own power, creating a fusion of shadowcraft that could, theoretically, surpass even the elders' understanding. But blending mortal sorcery with vampiric dominance was perilous. The shadows resisted the unnatural union, fracturing under the strain. The first true defeat came silently. During a routine consolidation of the court's influence, Veleth attempted a ritual to solidify his hold over a critical network of spies. Shadows he thought loyal turned against him at the precise moment he needed them, revealing his plots to Kareth. It was subtle, nearly imperceptible, yet devastating. The Silent Hand had failed in his most fundamental duty, control. The final confrontation, the culmination of Veleth's fall, occurred in the Vault of Mirrors, a hidden chamber beneath the Shadow Court's citadel. Here, the court's elders confronted him openly for the first time, flanked by Kareth and those whose loyalty had shifted. Veleth's powers were formidable, but they were now chaotic, fragmented by his overreach and the elders' careful manipulation. The battle was not one of brute strength, but of perception and illusion. Shadows clashed, bending and twisting, yet Veleth could no longer fully command them. Lysara's techniques, once his secret advantage, now served as a reminder of his hubris. Magic derived from humanity could not fully integrate with vampiric darkness. Kareth struck with precision, exploiting every hesitation, every flaw in Veleth's command. The Silent Hand, whose mind had orchestrated centuries of intrigue, now faced the raw power of united opposition. Shadows recoiled from him, obeying not his will, but the collective intent of those he once controlled. In the final moments, Veleth attempted a gambit, a self-imposed exile into the Shadow Realm, a liminal space between life and undeath where he might regain control. But the court's elders had anticipated even this. They bound him with a ritual that merged blood, shadow, and ancient wards. Veleth was neither destroyed nor freed. He became a prisoner within his own element, trapped in eternal twilight, a cautionary specter for generations of vampires to come. The aftermath and legacy. Vailitha's fall reshaped the Shadow Court. Kareth ascended, but his reign lacked the elegance and subtlety of the Silent Hand. The court, once feared for its omnipotence, became more cautious, wary of individuals who might rise above collective control. Whispers of Vailith persisted. Tales of a vampire lost within his own shadows, a cautionary figure illustrating the danger of curiosity unchecked by loyalty. Among mortal practitioners of magic, Vailith became legend. Some claimed that fragments of his shadowcraft had seeped into the world, empowering witches and warlocks in secret. Others warned that meddling with such shadows could invite Vailitha's gaze, a reminder that even fallen predators can leave traces capable of altering destinies. The story of Vailith is not merely one of failure. It is a study of ambition, hubris, and the limits of power. Even a vampire of unparalleled cunning cannot escape the consequences of overreach, nor can they ignore the subtle influence of human or mortal forces. His curiosity, once a strength, became a vulnerability. His isolation, once a tool, became a trap. The Silent Hand, master of shadows, was undone not by brute force, but by a combination of external challenge and internal miscalculation. Analysis, lessons from the fall. Vailitha's narrative illustrates the interplay of several key themes central to vampire mythos and the dynamics of power. Curiosity versus hubris. Vailitha's interest in mortal magic represents the classical tension between curiosity and hubris. While curiosity allows innovation and growth, unchecked ambition can blind even the most perceptive predator to risk. The fragility of trust. Within hierarchical systems like the Shadow Court, loyalty is contingent and often conditional. Vailitha's failure was compounded by his underestimation of others' ambitions. Trust, once fractured, can cascade into catastrophic consequences. Integration of power. The attempted fusion of mortal magic with vampiric shadowcraft highlights the limitations inherent in combining fundamentally different forms of energy. Power that exceeds comprehension or control can fragment, weakening its wielder rather than strengthening them. Isolation as vulnerability. Vailitha's reliance on secrecy, while initially an advantage, became a liability. Isolation prevents feedback, reduces perspective, and allows subtle threats to grow unnoticed until they are unstoppable. Legacy of warning. Even in defeat, Vailitha's story leaves a lasting imprint. His shadowcraft influences mortal and vampire spheres alike, demonstrating that failure does not erase power entirely. It transforms it, often unpredictably. The fall of the Shadow Court vampire Vailith serves as both myth and caution. It is a tale of brilliance undone by human-like frailty, a reminder that power alone cannot guarantee invincibility. Shadows may obey, whispers may bend, and empires may kneel, yet the smallest oversight, the faintest lapse in judgment, can unravel centuries of dominion. Vailitha's story endures not merely as legend, but as a reflection on ambition, curiosity, and the delicate balance between mastery and vulnerability. The Silent Hand remains a specter within the Shadow Court, a prisoner of his own making, an eternal emblem of what it means to command the darkness, and yet be undone by it. In the end, the vampire who once moved unseen, whose whispers shaped kings and queens, became a shadow of himself, a reminder that even in the immortal night, fallibility endures. Thank you for journeying into the shadowed realm of the Nocturnal Witch, keeper of the vampire throne. If the mysteries, power struggles, and moonlit secrets of this dark kingdom captivated you, be sure to like, subscribe, and join our growing coven of storytellers. Share your thoughts below. What part of her legacy intrigued you most? And which forbidden tale should we explore next? Until our paths cross again, keep your candles lit, your ward strong, and your curiosity unbound. The night holds many more secrets, and together, we'll uncover every one of them.